Discover the incredible life-changing power of daily habits. 30 days to an amazing transformation. Every morning felt like a victory. Sarah stood at the diner's griddle, the smell of fresh pancakes swirling around her like a warm embrace. At 35, she was a single mother of 2, and each flip of the pancake was a gentle reminder that she was still fighting. Underneath the bright lights of the diner, she poured her energy into making sure every trucker and local received their breakfast with a smile, even when her heart ached inside. She felt like just another face in the crowd, fading and overlooked, clinging to the memories of her father's tales about the American dream, a dream that felt further away with each passing day. The diner was her battleground, where orders flowed in like a river, and hopes drifted like leaves caught in the current. The town used to buzz with life, but lately, it felt like shadows loomed over every corner. Corporate giants threatened to swallow the town whole, but each morning as she spooned coffee into mugs, she held on to the remnants of something more, a flicker of rebellion against the chains that bound so many. Just then, she stumbled upon an old self-help book at a local thrift shop, its pages yellowed and crinkled at the edges. "Change in 30 days, it promised, waving a magic wand over her doubts. Maybe it was time to break free. With skepticism and a flicker of hope, she shared her journey online. Her page was a mosaic of small victories and stumbles, capturing the frenzy of juggling work and motherhood while yearning for personal growth. There were the supportive messages, the heart emojis, but also the cynics who doubted her. They whispered that dreams were just that, dreams. The weight of their doubts felt like a heavy coat, but she wore it to remind herself of what was at stake. Then the news hit like a thunderclap: the diner faced a corporate takeover. Panic spread, each gasp echoing in the hearts of loyal patrons. This diner was not just a place to eat. It was where children learned to dream, where birthdays were celebrated, where neighbors became friends. The thought of those sliding doors closing sent a chill through her. Sarah felt her heart sink into her stomach, but she refused to let despair win. She rallied her friends, family, and patrons, igniting a fire beneath their feet, a call to arms, a whisper against fate. As they gathered in the town square, Sarah's nerves buzzed like electricity. Faces she'd served countless times stared back at her, filled with a mix of hope and uncertainty. "We have to fight for our home," she cried, the words bursting from her chest. Just as her voice grew stronger, the distant sound of sirens crescendoed, drowning out the energy of the crowd. Local authorities were on their way, ready to snuff out their spark. Fear gripped her as the officers approached. Heart pounding, she scanned the crowd for familiar faces, those she had shared laughter and meals with. This was more than just about her. It was about the community's very heartbeat. With the threat looming, a choice locked her in place. Would she risk everything to spark change in a world that wanted to keep her quiet? The rally had turned from hopeful to tense, and as the officers drew closer, Sarah felt the weight of the moment. Could a single mother break the chains and inspire her community? Or would she be just another name to fade into the background? The sirens shrieked louder, slicing through the warm air filled with mixed emotions. Sarah squared her shoulders, the bone-deep anxiety bubbling inside her, battling the fire of determination that suddenly felt almost palpable. Around her, the crowd trembled, a sea of worried faces reflecting the fear rising like an ominous tide. But beneath that tumultuous surface, she sensed a flicker of something else. Was it anger? Hope? Desperation? Whatever it was, it ignited her spirit. "Listen! We can't let them take our diner," Sarah shouted, her voice steady now, rising above the discord. "This is our home. This is where we build memories. We won't let anyone take that away." The words rolled off her tongue like liquid courage, even as doubt crept into her mind. A few heads nodded, their faces hardening with resolve. She could see Maria, the waitress who had served her coffee on long nights when Sarah felt she was at the end of her rope. Beside her stood Tom, the mechanic who had once saved her car from a breakdown that would have left her stranded. These were the people who mattered, who understood the importance of a place like the diner. It was their heart, too. The officers, clad in uncomfortable uniforms that washed away their humanity, advanced toward the gathering. Their faces were stern, but Sarah could read the uncertainty behind their badges. They were just following orders. She understood that. Yet somehow, that made it worse. "Time to disperse, folks," one officer barked, his tone clipped. "You can't block the street like this." "No, we will not," Sarah countered, stepping forward, fists clenched. "You need to understand. This diner is more than just a building to us. It's where we come together as a community. You're not just fighting a building, you're fighting our spirit." At her words, a wave of murmurs washed over the crowd. People shifted restlessly but stood firm, anchored in their beliefs. They were tired of being silenced, tired of watching their lives slip away to faceless corporations. Her heart raced as she locked eyes with some of the officers. A flicker of recognition danced in their gazes, a moment of humanity amidst a grim situation. Just then, a familiar face emerged from the sea of spectators. Nora, her best friend since childhood, pushed her way to the front, breathless and vibrant. "My kids love this place, Sarah," she shouted over the murmur of the crowd. "They've made friends here." "Yes," Sarah echoed, feeling the energy surge around them. "This diner isn't just a lift for our bellies. It's a sanctuary for our souls." With each shout of support, confidence grew. Sarah noticed how ideas bounced among the crowd like fireflies. One voice joined another, until everyone united under a single banner of defiance. As the officers shifted nervously among themselves, Sarah felt the urgency of the moment. But in that chaos, a nagging fear surfaced. She had lit a fire, but what if it burned out before it could blossom into something lasting? What if they still lost everything? Doubt whispered insidiously. Yet, she pushed it away, carrying the words of her father within her heart. "A dream," he said, "is worth fighting for." And she couldn't fight alone. With a deep breath, Sarah rallied her thoughts. "If we lose this diner, we lose our connection. We lose our home. Let us take the power back, and show them what we're made of." Cheering erupted, echoing through the streets as hope twisted with determination, and the thickened resolve to risk it all surged through Sarah's veins. But would they be able to face the looming corporate giant that threatened to consume them all? As the first officer stepped forward, ready to issue an ultimatum, Sarah's heart lurched. The moment of truth was upon them, and she knew deep down that this was just the beginning. Would they prevail, or would darkness fall over their community forever? The officer took a deep breath, his gaze sweeping across the crowd. For a moment, time seemed to suspend itself, the air thick with anticipation. Sarah's heart pounded rapidly, each beat echoing a silent prayer that rang louder than the sirens. Then he spoke. "You need to move. This is an order." But his voice wavered slightly, the adherence to authority battling against the empathy that began to lace his tone. "Why are you doing this?" a voice cried out from the crowd. It was Mr. Sullivan, the diner's oldest patron, a man whose wrinkles held decades of laughter and memories spilled over greasy plates. "You're not just tearing down bricks, you're dismantling lives." People murmured in agreement. Sarah stepped closer to the officer. Her body trembled with adrenaline, the warmth of community sweeping over her like a wave. What if we gathered together to represent something greater? What if we turned this protest into a festival of hope? A celebration of what our diner means to all of us? A flicker of surprise crossed the officer's face. The thought seemed to resonate with him, the very idea of turning this moment from confrontation to unity sparking something in his eyes. Just then, she grabbed hold of the moment, feeling the energy coursing through her veins. "Let us create a movement," she called out, looking back at the crowd. "Let us turn this fear into action. We can have a classic diner day. Show them what we're about. Have contests, tell stories, invite everyone. This diner has fed us and nurtured us. Now we can nurture the spirit we've shared." The crowd erupted in cheers. Colorful banners appeared as if conjured from thin air. Smiles broke forth amidst tension. Old friends hugged and newcomers locked arms. For all they faced, hope burst through as bright as the diner's neon sign gleaming in the twilight. Sarah's heart swelled. Perhaps they could make a difference after all. "Let us get to work," Nora shouted, a brilliant smile plastered across her face. Arms reached out to grab decorations, tables, and everything else they could gather. The energy shifted, igniting a spark that flickered brightly against the impending darkness. Yet in the corners of Sarah's mind, a worry lurked. They could easily fail. The corporate giant would not easily back down. The fight ahead wouldn't just be for a piece of land. They'd be fighting for a place in their lives, a stitch in the fabric of their community life. As laughter mixed with shouts of excitement engulfed the street, Sarah stood on the sidelines, a mixture of gratitude and dread surging through her. She felt the weight of her dreams on her shoulders. What if they succeeded? What if they failed? The question twisted her stomach into tight knots, but she pushed it aside. For now, she tucked away the fear and let the joy wash over her. They were coming together, showing the world they wouldn't be silenced. United. But just then, the unmistakable roar of an engine made Sarah's heart drop. A convoy of sleek black SUVs rolled into view, the dark windows hiding the faces of those determining their fate. As the din of excitement quieted, all eyes shifted toward the approaching danger. What would happen when the corporate powers faced the spirit of the community head-on? The atmosphere thickened, the excitement shifting into trepidation. The true fight was just starting, and Sarah felt the pulse of the crowd quicken with every heartbeat. "Stand firm," she urged, but her voice trembled as she prepared to confront the looming figures against the light of their sanctuary. Would they be strong enough to hold their ground? As the SUVs came to a halt, a heavy silence settled over the crowd. A chilling wind swept through the street, carrying with it the weight of uncertainty. Sarah's heart raced again, thumping like a bass drum, drowning out the chaotic whirlwind of thoughts in her mind. The officers inside the vehicles were no ordinary enforcers. They were the corporate behemoth's muscle, sent to dismantle every shred of defiance in their path. The first door swung open. Out stepped a tall figure, sharply dressed in a tailored suit that spoke of power and privilege. The man surveyed the crowd, his expression a mix of disdain and bemusement. "You can't stop progress," he declared, his voice steeped in arrogance, as if the fate of the diner were mere collateral damage in his race for profit. Sarah clenched her fists, the thrill of hope quaking beneath layers of dread. She could sense the tension ricocheting through her neighbors. Anger simmered in the air, but she couldn't let it boil over. "We are more than just a diner," she shouted back, her voice slicing through the oppressive atmosphere. "We are a community. We have stories, memories, love wrapped in the old booths and on the walls." A flicker of disbelief crossed the man's face, but he quickly masked it with a smirk. "Love doesn't pay the bills, sweetheart. This land is being sold. Your little festival won't change that." But even as he spoke, Sarah could feel a change within the crowd. They weren't backing down. Faces that had once been filled with despair now radiated a fierce determination. Mr. Sullivan stepped forward, age and wisdom radiating from him. "You underestimate us if you think this is just about bricks," he added, his voice strong. "This isn't simply a fight for a diner. It's a fight for our homes, our memories, our families." The murmurs of support rippled through the crowd, their collective courage growing louder. "Sarah's right. We should be proud of what we've built here," a young voice chimed in. With each moment, hope surged higher, pushing back their fears. Sarah could almost feel the warmth blossoming within the crowd, like sunlight breaking through heavy clouds. Word by word, they built a shield of unity, standing firm against the chilly winds of corporate greed. But just as adrenaline surged, so did fear. Doubt crept in. What if the crowd's bravery faltered under the pressure of these powerful men? She scanned the faces of her friends and neighbors, searching for determination. Banners fluttered like flags of defiance in the sudden gusts. The once quiet street was now alive with murmurs of uprising. An unexpected renaissance sparked from the ashes of despair. As people rallied behind an idea, together they could fight back. "We need to plan," Sarah shouted, feeling the current of excitement volt through her. "We can organize rallies, craft messages, let our voices echo in the halls of power." The laughter and cheers that erupted mirrored a sense of solidarity, and it cemented a bond that could withstand anything. As their cheers grew louder, Sarah felt a flicker of hope whoosh past the knot of fear in her stomach. They were powerful, and they were not backing down. But just then, the man raised a hand, silencing the throng. "You think this is a joke? I'll give you a chance to abandon this foolishness. If you don't, we'll make sure you regret it." The threat hung in the air, heavy and full of dire implications. The crowd's energy shifted again, uncertainty creeping back in. Would they really face retaliation? What would it mean to fight back against such power? Fear gnawed at Sarah, but the spirit of the community was strong. "Together, we can withstand anything," she urged, though she could feel the hairs on her arms standing, the stakes climbing higher. Could they hold on? And more importantly, would they dare to confront the darkness ahead? The battle lines were drawn, and in that moment, Sarah knew this was just the beginning. The sun was setting, casting long silhouettes against their resolve, but there was still time. Time to reclaim not just a diner, but their spirit. As the man stepped closer, ready to unleash his plan, Sarah's heart raced anew. Something deep inside her ignited a determination to turn fear into action. Would they confront him, or would this be the moment they were crushed? Would they rise? The stakes were higher than they had ever been, and Sarah felt the world teetering on the brink of change. What would unfold in the moments to come? The tension in the air crackled, suffocating yet electric, as the man regarded them with a smirk that spoke volumes. There was a confidence about him that felt overwhelming, a sense of entitlement that made Sarah's skin crawl. He was certain he held the upper hand, but beneath that arrogance, she sensed the slightest tremor of doubt. Maybe, just maybe, he hadn't anticipated this level of resistance from the ordinary people he deemed insignificant. "Regret?" someone muttered from the back. It was Mrs. Peterson, her gray hair glinting like silver in the fading light. "Regret's on your side, darling. This place is our heart." A wave of murmurs spread through the crowd, emboldening Sarah. She could almost see the fire igniting in their eyes, a quiet resolve matching her own. If they were going to stand together, they had to do it now, right under the looming shadow of authority. "Let us make a plan," Sarah shouted, her voice rising over the murmurs. "We can hit back harder. A peaceful protest. Let everyone know what we're fighting for. If they think our stories don't matter, we'll make them impossible to ignore." A young man caught her eye, nodding fervently. "Organize something big. A rally on the weekend. Let South turn this whole street into a celebration of our community." "Exactly," Sarah exclaimed, urgency electrifying her words. "Let our message be clear. This isn't just about a diner. It's about our community, our families, our right to exist where we have built our lives." The man in the suit shifted, a hint of annoyance crossing his face. "You can make all the noise you want," he scoffed, but even his voice shook slightly now. It won't change the outcome. "We're here for business." "Then let us make business personal." Mr. Sullivan stepped up beside Sarah, his eyes gleaming with wisdom and determination. "Let them see the faces behind those memories. Let them meet the generations whose laughter echoed within those walls. They won't just tear down bricks. They will be tearing apart lives. The crowd surged in excitement, the promise of action igniting their spirits. They began to shout slogans, their voices roaring like an unstoppable wave. Save our diner. Save our stories. A distant rhythm of hope drummed in the pit of Sarah's stomach, harmonizing with the heartbeat of community. But there was no ignoring the cold reality hanging over them. The looming threat of retaliation breathed heavily on her neck, and she knew it wouldn't come without consequences. We have to be smart, she reminded everyone, though doubt nipped at her heels. We need safety in numbers. Let us work together, talk to everyone we know. The more voices, the stronger we'll be. People rose to the occasion, breaking into groups, a web weaving across the street as neighbors leaned into their shared resolve. Sarah watched as old alliances reformed and new friendships sparked. Each conversation fueled the fire of unity. She could feel it, the dawning of something powerful. Hope intermingled with the chill of uncertainty, making her heart ache. But just as she began to feel the exhilaration of possibility, the man took a step closer to her, his voice low and cutting. "You'll regret this," he warned, and behind him, his entourage shifted with a predatory gleam. "You think this is a community? It's a liability." Sarah took a deep breath, summoning courage that surged from her core. "And you underestimate the power of a united community. We are not a liability, we are a force." As emotions swirled like the wind surrounding them, one thought burned bright in Sarah's mind. They were on the edge of something big, and if they fell, they would fall together. Would their courage hold strong against the oncoming storm? Would they face the dark shadows looming ahead or let it swallow them whole? In that moment, the night deepened, and as the wind howled around them, she knew their fight was far from over. The stakes had just gotten higher, but so had their resolve. What would happen next? The street was alive with energy, a palpable force that surged through every person gathered. The air hummed, filled with voices calling for change, igniting dreams long buried under the weight of routine. Sarah could feel her heart racing, the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She glanced around, her eyes darting between the familiar faces, each one a reflection of shared struggles and unyielding hope. "Let us talk about our stories," she encouraged, raising her voice to reach the growing crowd. "Each one of us has something to contribute. Every moment spent in that diner counts. It's where our kids learn to laugh, where our grandparents reminisced about life. Let us capture that." Mr. Sullivan nodded in agreement, stepping forward. "And we need to tell the media. Let them know what is at stake. We need their support to amplify our voice. This isn't just about us anymore. We're speaking for everyone who feels powerless." "Right," Sarah shouted. "We can invite reporters, share our memories, our photos. If they see our faces, feel our stories, they can't ignore us. This is our home." A collective murmur of excitement rippled through the crowd, strengthening their resolve. Sarah watched as several teenagers at the front began jotting down ideas, while mothers exchanged stories of their children's favorite meals at the diner. Each word exchanged was a brick laid in their protective wall, a fortress built from memories and collective experience. But the man in the suit stood nearby, arms crossed, his expression hardening. He could sense their rising defiance, his smirk faltering. "You think you can change anything? The world doesn't care about your nostalgia," he retorted, trying to cut through their momentum. "Not yet, perhaps," Mrs. Peterson interjected, her voice steady. "But the world must learn the truth, and we will make it know. Our diner, our community, it's worth fighting for." With every passing moment, Sarah's confidence grew. They were becoming a wave, ready to crash down on whatever barriers stood in their way. "Let us set up a meeting for this weekend," she proposed, heart racing. "Everyone needs to attend. We'll solidify our plan there and gather stories, photos, anything that shows the soul of our community. We'll have our rally, and it will be a celebration of us." The crowd erupted into cheers, voices rising as anxiety transformed into excitement. Sarah felt a knot of worry begin to loosen, the power of unity washing over her. She had never felt such a swell of love and purpose before. It was intoxicating. Yet, just as the air buzzed with fervor, shadows crept through her mind. Would her words hold enough weight? Would their combined stories resonate with those who had the power to make a difference? As people began exchanging contact information, Sarah caught a glimpse of the man, silent now, but with something darker lurking behind his eyes. What schemes were brewing behind that simmering rage? The evening was thick with potential and danger, and beneath their excitement lay an undercurrent of fear. Are we ready for the battle ahead? Sarah wondered aloud, trying to rally her strength. Will we stand firm if they come for us? Hesitation flitted through the crowd, as nervous glances were exchanged. But then a little girl, clutching a teddy bear, stepped forward. We can be brave together, right? Her innocent faith lifted the atmosphere, and laughter spilled from lips that once trembled. Yes, shouted a voice. Together, we can do anything. With renewed passion, they turned back to the man in the suit, who now seemed smaller amid the throng of determined souls. But even as they united, something deep inside Sarah whispered that the fight was just beginning. What if this was only the calm before the storm? What if the reactions they faced were far worse than they imagined? The laughter lingered in the air, but behind it, uncertainty loomed, waiting for its moment to break free. As darkness tiptoed close, Sarah realized they stood at the brink of a greater challenge than they had prepared for. Would they be ready when the time came? The sun dipped low, casting a golden glow over the bustling street, as Sarah felt the weight of the moment settle in her chest. The crowd was alive, but something behind her eyes was brewing, a mixture of determination and fear. She longed to believe they could make a difference. Could this momentum really lead to change? She stole a glance at the man in the suit, whose sneer cut through the air like a knife, and a shiver ran down her spine. "Let us break into smaller groups," Mr. Sullivan suggested, bringing Sarah back to the present. "We can organize how we'll gather our stories, what we need for the media, and how to make our presence felt." He looked around at the eager faces, and Sarah could see the resolve hardening again. "Good idea," she said, heart pounding. "Let's outline our approach. The more specific we are, the better." She gestured for the teens to gather with a few mothers, while older folks found a spot on a nearby bench, a home base for memories. As they broke apart, Sarah joined a group with Mr. Sullivan and a few men who had come to the diner every day for years. Their memories poured out like a pot of coffee, steaming and rich. They recounted the first time they tasted the diner's apple pie, or their experiences of late-night chats over milkshakes. Each story was a stitch, weaving the fabric of their community. "Do you remember the time," one man began, his eyes sparkling with nostalgia, "when we had to hold a bake-off just to keep the diner from closing?" Laughter erupted, bridging gaps in the air. "Or when the fire alarms went off, and half the town showed up thinking it was the end of the diner," another added, shaking his head with an amused grin. They leaned in, enthralled by the cherished tales. Just then, Sarah's phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a text from her friend Anna. "People around here are starting to hear about your meeting. Just got a call from the local news." Excitement bubbled up in her throat. "Did you hear that?" she said, clapping her hands to draw attention. "The news is going to cover our stories. We need to be ready." The buzz of energy surged back, filling the air. However, just as things began to look bright, an ominous figure appeared at the edge of the crowd, arms still crossed, now flanked by two people who looked equally imposing in suits. The atmosphere shifted. Conversations turned to whispers. Sarah's heart raced again. They were the Hawks, circling closer. "What are they doing here?" Mr. Sullivan muttered, his eyes narrowing. Maybe they are here to intimidate us, Sarah replied, anxiety slipping back in. She could feel the air thicken, the laughter around them stifled. As the suit-clad men approached, the crowd instinctively drew together, a human barrier forming. The man in the front spoke, his voice slick, laced with a venomous charm. You think your stories can make a difference? Let me remind you there are consequences to drawing attention. What kind of consequences? Sarah challenged, stepping forward despite her fear echoing in her ears. The man looked her up and down, a predatory gleam in his eye. You'll find out soon enough. Gasps echoed through the crowd, and the atmosphere weighed heavily with unease. Sarah felt the tension grow, the excitement of the afternoon overshadowed by a looming threat. Stand together, Mr. Sullivan urged, as the crowd visibly tensed. Don't let them break our spirit. But the man's words hummed like a cloud. Sarah's heart raced, uncertainty slipping back in. Would they be able to face whatever storm was brewing? As the man in the suit took a step back, surveying the sea of faces filled with determination, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something much bigger than they ever anticipated. The power of stories was rising, but so was the danger. What would the next hours bring? The murmur rippled through the crowd. Eyes flickered from the suited man to one another, uncertainty bouncing off the faces of families and friends who had gathered. The vibrant energy that once filled the air was now punctuated by a charged silence. Sarah felt the raw pulse of fear and defiance mingle within her. This was their moment, but the threat loomed large. Mr. Sullivan stepped closer to Sarah, his voice low but steady. We can't let them shake us. Remember what we're fighting for. It's not just about the diner, it's about all of us. Each of our stories matters. He met her gaze, his eyes glinting with an iron resolve. Another woman from the group stepped up too. We've built so much here. We are not just going to stand by and let them bulldoze over us. They need to listen. The crowd began to murmur again. A swell of agreement rose like the tide. Sarah could feel it, the pulse of hope starting to surge, forcing the fear to retreat. Let us go back to those memories, she said, feeling the words tumble out. We need to document them, share them, show the world what this diner means to us. Yes, shouted a young student, eyes bright. Let us create a campaign, make posters, and share our stories online. We can't just keep quiet. As if on cue, the suited man wore a mask of disdain, shaking his head slowly. You think this will help? This community effort? It's cute, but let me be clear. Real change doesn't come from whispers. It comes from power, and we have that power. Their statement echoed ominously, but Sarah couldn't let it take hold. She squared her shoulders. We have our stories. And stories have power too. They can't silence us if we stand together. Another wave of energy surged through the crowd. People began to clap, then shout in support of her words. It felt electric, transforming uncertainty into a collective roar. The suited man flinched, his bravado faltering for just a moment as the crowd pushed back against the weight of his threat. However, adrenaline could only carry them so far. In the midst of their defiance, Sarah spotted subtle movements at the edge of the crowd. Their fears were confirmed. A group of town officials had arrived, drawn by the sounds of a gathering. A few were mouthpieces of the very man who stood against them, and seeing them approach sent a wave of anxiety rushing through her. Everyone stay focused, Mr. Sullivan shouted, rallying them back into their purpose. Gather your stories. We can still make a difference. With trembling hands, Sarah pulled out her notebook, the pages blank but ripe for tales of shared dreams and memories. She approached the first person in the crowd, a grandmother, who had been sharing the diner's apple pie recipe for decades. Can you share your story with me? Sarah asked softly, heart racing, fully aware that each tale was a brick in the wall they were building together. Just then, the suited man lowered his voice, ensuring everyone could hear as he addressed the newcomers. "What you're stepping into is a dangerous game. If you provoke us, you will regret it." But Sarah felt an unexpected warmth trickle down her spine. Fear had sparked determination. In that moment, she sensed a shift. The air felt lighter despite the challenges ahead. Would their stories become a rallying cry, or would they simply be swept away? Before she could ponder further, someone stepped forward, their face shadowed but full of resolve. "I've got many stories to tell. It's time we start sharing them." Hope flickered amidst the brewing storm as Sarah realized together they could weave a tapestry strong enough to stand against the forces threatening to unravel their community. As the voices grew louder, Sarah couldn't help but wonder, would this not only change the diner but also transform their town forever? The air crackled with anticipation as the crowd began to gather their stories. Sarah felt her heart race as she watched faces light up with fervor. One by one, tales emerged like fireflies in the dimming light, illuminating the path they were carving together. Each narrative was a stitch in the fabric of their community, vibrant and full of life. "Tell them about the dance nights, Grandma," a voice piped up from the back. The grandmother Sarah had approached smiled warmly, her eyes glistening with years of nostalgia. "Oh, those nights were magical," she began, her voice carrying the weight of memories. "We would come together, all of us, from every corner of this town. The music would fill the air, and we would dance as if we were all just kids again." The crowd leaned in closer, hanging on her every word. Sarah scribbled notes, feeling a warmth spreading through her chest. There was something incredible about how these stories worked. They weren't just words, they were connections. Every slice of pie I baked brought people together, the grandmother continued, her voice gaining strength. "We shared laughter, joy, and even sorrow across those tables. This diner is a piece of our home, not a number on a plan." A ripple of agreement surged through the gathered crowd, transforming infection into communion. Sarah caught Mr. Sullivan's eye, and he nodded in approval, his features unusually relaxed. They were building something here, something potent and defiant. Next, a young man stepped forward, his hands clenched by his side. "I remember going there every Saturday morning with my dad," he said, his voice soft yet steady. "It was like our sacred spot. He taught me how to drive in that parking lot. He took me to my first job interview. It's where I learned about life." "Exactly," called out another voice from the back. "It's history. It's our legacy." The crowd echoed with their agreement, a thunderous roar of passion that cascaded into a wave of hope. In the thick of it, Sarah felt buoyed by their energy. It washed away the doubt that had overshadowed her moments before. Their collective resilience was radiating, pushing away thoughts of defeat. Yet, beneath all the excitement, the stark reminder of the impending confrontation loomed. As if on cue, the suited man stepped closer again, his brow furrowed with irritation. "What you are doing is reckless. You think this will change anything? It won't. There are real consequences for provoking those in power." His words dripped with condescension, aiming to pierce their newfound determination. Sarah stepped forward, heart pounding wildly in her chest. "And what is your vision?" she challenged, her voice strong despite the fear that lingered at the edges. "To erase us? To forget our stories? That will only make us stronger." The crowd roared, a mix of outrage and defiance, drowning out the suited words. Sarah felt a swell of pride wash over her. They were in the storm together, and no single voice could overpower their chorus. But then, she saw new faces arriving at the edge of the crowd, more officials, their expressions unreadable, eyes scanning the group like hawks. A chill rushed through Sarah, prickling skin and sparking anxiety. Everyone. Mr. Sullivan's voice, typically calm, trembled slightly, drawing attention. "We need a plan. They could shut this down at any moment. We need to take our stories beyond this day." We need leverage. His urgency seeped into the atmosphere, wrapping around them like a cloak. The murmurs of concern mingled with trembling excitement at the notion of fighting back, but unease gnawed at Sarah. Did they have enough to stand their ground? Should they be aiming even higher beyond just defending the diner? In that moment, one question loomed glaring above everything else. What were they willing to risk for the story? As thoughts surged and feelings collided, she stared into the horizon, uncertainty blending with determination. Would they truly rise, or would the walls of power come crashing down around them? The sun had begun to set, casting an amber glow over the anxious crowd, illuminating the earnest faces of the townspeople who had gathered to reclaim their diner, their heart. Each voice echoed with determination, the swell of their stories building like a full-throated chorus ready to battle the oppressive silence that had long stifled them. Sarah stood at the forefront, pulse racing, feeling the weight of connection between everyone gathered. She looked around at the faces young and old, hopeful and resolute. The stories were flowing now, pouring from hearts that had once felt like they were breaking. Just minutes ago, fear threatened to consume them, but now they stood united, ready to rise together. The elderly grandmother, who had shared the magic of dance nights, grinned as more joined in. "This diner isn't just our favorite place to eat. It's where we came together for life's milestones," she called out, her voice invigorated by the energy that surrounded her. "We celebrated births, and we mourned losses, all of it threaded into the very walls that stand here." Each recollection fueled the fire in Sarah's heart. It wasn't merely about saving a building. They were salvaging love, that incredible force that tied their community together. Her own memories flickered in her mind, moments spent sharing laughter over pancakes, the comfort of familiar faces, and the grind of daily life woven into every inch of the diner. Mr. Sullivan stepped beside her, his voice steady and filled with purpose. "Everyone, let us remember this. When we put our hearts together, we can change minds." The crowd nodded, enthusiasm surging as more stories flowed, creating a tide against the looming threat of corporate indifference. They were transforming into an unstoppable force, one heartbeat, one narrative at a time. But the suited man still loomed, frustration etched into his features as the crowd's vibrant energy rose into a passionate roar, drowning out his derision. "You will regret this," he shouted, but even his menacing presence seemed to wane under their collective resolve. Sarah couldn't ignore the ignition of fear that danced in her chest but pressed on, driven by the desire to shield those memories stitched so lovingly into their lives. "We will stand firm. Everything we love and cherish is at stake." Her words were like flares, igniting sparks of bravery in others. "We will show them what this diner means to us. Share your stories. Let the world know about our home." With that, the crowd ignited, voices intertwining, resonating like an anthem of hope. "Save our diner. Save our stories." They recited that chorus in unison, with fervor that shook the ground beneath the man in the suit. Just as she felt the tide surging, the town officials stepped closer, their concern palpable amidst the surging spirit. But Sarah stood firm, nudged ahead by the fiery determination that rose in tandem with the hope in her chest. They couldn't back down. This had evolved into a stand not just for their beloved diner, but for their community, their family. Then a voice from the back of the crowd rose above the rest: "We can organize. We must reach out to the news, to local businesses, expert support." It was Anna, one of her closest friends. Her enthusiasm was infectious, echoing the resolve that bound them all together. "Together," they chanted, the call to arms growing louder. Together. Standing shoulder to shoulder, they envisioned a future where their stories wouldn't just be whispers. Sarah felt the weight of fear lift momentarily, replaced by unshakable faith in the power of unity. With adrenaline coursing through them, they broke into groups, instantly ignited with action-focused plans. They wrote down memories, gathered photographs, and formed strategies to flood social media with their stories. The energy thrummed. Each person understood this fight was no longer a chore. It was vital. As discussions thrived and laughter danced between the shared memories, Sarah raised her hands to regain focus amidst the clamor. "Listen," she said, voice steady. "It's not just about today. Let us prepare for whatever comes next. Even if they try to silence us, we'll be too loud to ignore." Everyone's eyes glimmered in agreement, passion alive in their veins. With hearts ignited, they spoke of plans for a celebration. It would honor their diner, the memories it housed, and the community's strength. "A festival!" Someone cheered. "Let us show them we will not be dismissed." The energy shifted, washing over them like fresh inspiration. They nodded toward one another, saw the commitment etched in every line of their faces. Their hearts beat as one, and in that charged moment, they became a force of humanity that couldn't be ignored. A week passed, and they worked tirelessly to prepare for the upcoming festival. It would not just be a show of defiance against corporate giants. It would be a showcase of their vibrant community spirit, a celebration of stories told and shared. The day of reckoning arrived, everything beautifully adorned and overflowing with laughter. The atmosphere sparkled. Children played, families embraced, and stories flowed like sweet tea. Posters filled with memories stood like sentinels around the diner, a visual testament to the strength of their unity. And just as Sarah stood back, filled with overwhelming emotion, the familiar roar of the SUVs sliced through the laughter. The crowd felt a collective breath catch in their throats, eyes drawn toward the darkened vehicles once again inching toward their sanctuary. But this time, something was different. Sarah felt stability beneath her feet. The footprints of her community anchored her to the ground. They were prepared. As the car doors swung open, and the suited men stepped out, they were met not with fear, but with a swelling tide of voices. "You can try to silence us," Sarah shouted, heart pounding steadily in rhythm, with the strength of her community behind her. "But we are here. This is our home." The crowd roared with solidified conviction. That day, they fought not just for a diner, they fought for a dream that embraced life, laughter, and shared experiences. And there it was, the unmistakable feeling that their hearts, united, had become a force that could not be diminished. As the battle unfolded, it became clear that indeed, this was simply a fight for one restaurant. It was a dance of dreams and community, written into the very fabric of what it means to belong. Hope surging like a tidal wave, Sarah's heart swelled, warming her from the inside. This was their moment, and they would not let it slip away. Now, as the dust settled and voices mingled, one thing was clear. Despite whatever hurdles lay ahead, Sarah knew they would face them head-on, together. They were family. And joined together, they truly could change everything. So here's where you come in. You need to subscribe now to catch every inspiring story like this. This is the moment to show your support for the power of community. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and get these voices heard. Comment below with your thoughts and feelings about this powerful journey. Don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Your support matters. It makes a difference.